Welcome to Keep Taking Ground, the Saxophone podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ryan, and we're back with season number 2. Listen, the response to season 1 has been amazing. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone that tuned in, commented, shared the episodes, and subscribed. The love has been really encouraging, and I'm excited to bring you 10 new conversations this season. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, welcome. You can expect conversations with award-winning and in-demand saxophonists from around the world and across contemporary styles. I really believe that these award-winning and in-demand saxophonists know something that the rest of us don't quite know yet, and that's what I'm curious about. I want to create a resource that will help you keep taking ground in your personal, professional, musical, and creative journeys and connect with the saxophone community worldwide. Without further ado, today's guest is an Emmy Award-winning artist and has been called one of this generation's most exciting emerging voices in the jazz world. Not only does he exhibit world-class virtuosity on the alto saxophone, but he's also a uniquely talented vocalist, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and composer whose sound blends jazz, soul, and alternative R&B into a fresh new sound all his own. He's been featured on several of Christian Scott's studio albums, and he's also toured and performed with Christian McBride's big band, John Baptiste, and Marquis Hill, among others. During this time, he was also selected as a semi-finalist in the 2013 Thelonious Monk International Jazz Saxophone Competition. It's my pleasure to welcome the amazing Braxton Cook to the podcast. Braxton, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's up, bro?
Good to
I'm
have
good,
you.
man. I'm good.
Amazing,
It's
amazing.
a
Good to
pleasure to be here.
My pleasure really to have you, man. When I started this podcast, you were one of the people on the very first list of possible guests.
Oh,
um
man.
I didn't reach out to you last season because I was just starting up, and I know you're a busy guy, but it's really a pleasure to have you on this season. What have you been up to?
Man, personally, been up to a lot. So, married for, over a year now.
Yep.
And me and my wife, we just brought our little beautiful boy into the world. His name's August Cook, August J. Cook. He was born
Amazing.
like
Congrats, man.
August 31st, too. So, like, he just made the cutoff, too. Um, Yeah, he's a great guy too. He's really awesome, and we just had our first family trip last weekend when we went to Palm Desert. For those that don't know, I'm located out in Los Angeles now.
Yep.
I had been in New York, but we relocated over the past year
Hmm.
during the pandemic, in the middle of the pandemic actually. And so still getting adjusted to this lifestyle, like
Yeah.
driving and doing all that. But it's been nice. It's been super nice. And my wife's family is from out here, so I'm very
Hmm.
fortunate to have like family, out
Yeah. Yeah.
here
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
lean on. They've been super supportive for the first 2 months of August life, because it's so much work. It's such an adjustment. You just don't sleep. So having that's been awesome. And seeing him just come out of his shell and be more social with family members, is really good to see. Because I'm sure a lot of people during certain parts of the pandemic just felt super scared about all that. But, the timing with everyone being vaccinated in our family,
Yep.
and, the precautions we're taking, it's nice. It's good that he's afforded that luxury now, and that we are too, that we can just all be together and hang out
That's
safely.
that's amazing, man. It's so good to see a young jazz musician married, having starting a family. Is that isn't always the case, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the podcast. But in case the listeners don't know who you are, um, what can you say? Who is Braxton Cook?
So, firstly, I'm a musician. I'm a jazz musician,
Yeah,
jazz saxophonist. My
yeah,
first love was the saxophone. I found my way into the music probably hearing just funk and R&B tunes with like a lot of horns on it.
yeah.
Eventually found my way to Grover Washington, from there to Cannonball Adderley, from there to Charlie Parker. And then at that point, I don't know, 14, 15 years old, I was just hooked. So I'm for sure, a jazz saxophonist at the core.
Yeah.
And then over my development and over the years, have just started to kind of grow and add and evolve all these different skills and different interests, and to hopefully create a just a textured, nuanced, voice, that's incorporating the history of the music and all types of different styles of music, and a just honest representation of where I'm at as an artist. So
Amazing.
that's it in a nutshell. And over the past year, I've learned that there's more. There's way more than that. I'm
Yeah,
a
yeah.
father. I'm a husband. I'm a run a business, obviously, like, my own business,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, and all these other things that we've had to figure out
Yeah.
over the past year.
Good. My first introduction to you, I believe, was 2013 for the Thelonious Monk Jazz Saxophone
Oh
competition,
yeah,
right? And I
yeah,
had
man.
just moved to Toronto. So I moved to Toronto August of 2013. So I had just started my second year at Humber College here. And I was sitting in my room watching the competition online. And I was like, yo, this guy is so dope. And I think that's when I started following you and just checking out your music. And I've been a fan ever since. I think I've probably seen every video that you've put out and just
Wow.
like listened to all your records. And no doubt you've been a pretty influential um, saxophonist and musician of our generation, the music that's happening now, kind of incorporating the history of the music, but also pushing it forward, especially to millennials, right? I know that's something that you're really passionate about, but a lot of
Mhm.
people know what you've been involved in now. But let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
How did you come out through music? How did a saxophone end up in your hand?
Right. So probably the first time I really saw a saxophone up close and got to play the saxophone, I might have been 5 or 6 years old actually, and um, this is just happenstance maybe or fate, Maybe got, but so my mom was renting my dad a saxophone for his birthday,
Yeah.
sometime in the 90s, and he's practicing the horn, and he bought this show tune book where he's like reading the music and playing these tunes. And I just remember him practicing in the basement. I made my way down there
Yeah.
because just the sound of it just kind of drew me in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just watched him practice for a minute, and then he was like, "You want to try it?" So he just turns the horn over and lets me
Yeah.
play while
Yeah.
he's still holding the fingers. And I got a decent tone out of it. And I remember
Yeah.
him being surprised by it. I was surprised by it. My other brothers, I got three brothers at the
Oh wow.
time. I think only two. My baby brother maybe wasn't even born yet,
Yeah.
um, or he was just an infant. So the other two brothers, my older brother and little brother, both tried it. They squeaked on the horn. Maybe I don't know. Maybe biting too hard. I'm not sure. But I got like a nice tone,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think that laid the seed. One to just it just naturally I just got a nice sound out of it,
Yeah.
and then two just have it. My dad being like genuinely shocked, I'm like, oh, okay, that was pretty good. I'm like 5 years old, 6 years old, and then um, I kind of forgot about it, just like a regular kid. I just moved on, just playing basketball, playing sports, hanging with my brothers. And didn't pay it much mind. I think at the time we were all in piano lessons. My mom played classical piano,
Okay.
a bunch of competitions growing up. So we got Chopin, all this stuff, and she got us on Beethoven early.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
always wanted to just learn it by ear,
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't want to read it. I just wanted to memorize it
Mm-hmm.
and learn it by ear and stuff. But she got us in piano lessons. So that was actually my formal training was on piano.
Right.
Saxophone didn't come back into the picture. So another 6 years. I would say like I was maybe in fifth grade, so
Okay.
11, something
Okay.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in fifth grade, you finally get to join band class or
Right.
orchestra. I went band,
Yep.
and we had a sheet where I could fill out whether, my preferences. And I wanted saxophone, then trumpet, then something else. I ended up getting the saxophone,
Mm-hmm.
getting selected for saxophone, got the altos. That was just the one that fit. And I was a short dude, little small guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, and I don't know, band class was super easy for me too. It was fun. Again, like I like to just play the instrument by ear as much as I could, just learning stuff that I heard on the radio or
Mm-hmm.
that I grew up listening to. And the still not really into jazz very much, just the instrument first. Like I loved the saxophone
Yeah.
and just playing what I heard. And jazz, that came a bit later. I was at 14, 15, like starting high school. I went to middle school down in Atlanta. Eventually, we made our way back to Maryland, where I grew up, but this time in Montgomery County. Grew up in Prince George's County, then to Atlanta, then back, but then Montgomery County for high school. And then I started at this school called Springbrook, and I wanted to get into the jazz band. And in order to get in the jazz band, you had to do a summer camp just as a prerequisite to even get into jazz band. So I signed up for this summer camp, or rather, my dad did. And I'm very grateful for him for doing this. He was like, all right, you're doing this summer camp. It's called Everybody Can Play Jazz. So I signed up. I'm nervous as hell, because I'm like, wait, improvisation, solos, I wasn't familiar with all that. And in that like 2-week camp, so they brought some of DC's best musicians in to come teach. And, some cats that taught at Duke Ellington School of Arts, like some really good musicians. Morgan Russell was the guy that was teaching saxophone at the time. And he was the one that was pushing the saxophone section when we had sectionals into like learning how to solo. So starting with the blues scale, and that's where it started at 14 for me. And like I took my first solo, was nervous as all hell, and it went okay, I think, on the F blues, and I started to slowly just get more comfortable. And the more I practiced, the more confident I felt when it came time for the concert, and the more, and I realized, all right, I just got to put in more time to alleviate this fear. I think that's kind of where it started. Like I knew I loved it, but getting up there and playing, like it made me super nervous. And I noticed the more I would practice this blues scale, I would get more comfortable with what I wanted to say, what I wanted to play, and it became less nerve-wracking for me. And by the end of the camp, I really just kind of fell in love with it. They put me on to so much music, because there was like a little history class as well, and they put me on to all the classics. And at that point, I was hooked. I got in the jazz band a year later. My sophomore year, Wynton Marsalis came to our high school actually to do a master class, and that sealed the deal, because Wynton just pulled up, and it was like, it felt like how when the basketball team was going to the championship, it felt like that kind of energy in our auditorium. They busting all the schools in our county, Washington Post, all the press is there. It was like a whole event, So in addition to like my love for it, I felt like there was like just youthful energy. Everybody was like, "Oh, this is a really big deal in Maryland."
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. I want to shout out all the music educators out there, because I think they're some of the unsung heroes of the industry. When I have these conversations with guests, inevitably one of them, well, I get a new name or introduced to a new music educator that kind of started their journey. And let's fast forward a little bit though. So you went to jazz
I
camp.
skipped one educator, excuse me. So Morgan Russell ended up working at this place called Dale Music. At Dale Music, I met this horn player, Elijah Ballbed. He's the homie. He was the guy that was like a year older than me, that was the one just pulling me into every jam session. Like, bro, you need to be here. You need to do this. That kind of tutelage was also super crucial. Having a peer that's just a little more experienced than you, that's just going to push you. That was my guy. And he was studying with this dude, Paul Carr. And Paul Carr was just like the saxophone guru in our area. And that's another educator that, people, in case people don't know, he's the guy as well. Morgan Russell for sure got me going. And then Paul Carr just,
shout out to Morgan and Paul. I mean, if you guys know them, let's take a moment here on the podcast to celebrate those guys and all music educators.
Straight up.
Yeah, man. So let's fast forward to your tertiary level education. So this is not super common. You went from George Strong to picking up a scholarship at the Juilliard School. So explain to us how that happened.
Man, that was a lot had to line up. So first, back in high school, like I did the all county, all state. Then I did Grammy band, then I did Young Arts and all this stuff. So I started winning these getting on that national kind of level as far as being a high school saxophonist.
Yes.
And with that, you meet some of the nation's best musicians, and a lot of them went straight to music school. They went straight to Juilliard, straight to Berkeley, straight to wherever. And there was a bit of FOMO that hit me, at the end of senior year, where I got into all these music schools. I got into Manhattan New School. I didn't even apply to Juilliard, actually. I didn't even know they had a jazz program, but I applied to all these schools, got in. However, my scholarships were just like Howard was full scholarship, North Carolina Central full scholarship, Georgetown. It came down to a real practical kind of thing for me, for my dad too. My parents are like, bro, like I think this makes the most sense. I don't know if you want to take out these loans to, like that was hard for like my 18-year-old mind to wrap. I couldn't wrap my mind around that. I was like, but this is what I want to do. And they were like, man, I think Go to Georgetown. You can still be a musician. Just work in the city. Blah blah. It'll work
Yeah.
out. Go to New York later. I wasn't trying to hear that, but looking back, like it was absolutely the right decision, and I'm glad that at the end of the day, I did that. Because Georgetown, it was a really beautiful 2 years. Being in DC just really afforded me the ability to get one, a well-rounded education, two, spend a couple years kind of figuring out exactly what I wanted to do,
Yeah.
and then three, like letting me hone my skills and get like professional development almost in a market not as intense as New York.
Yeah.
I was running jam sessions, starting to play my own, like started my own quartet at 17, 18, you know what I mean? Learning
Yeah.
to talk to an audience, learning to put a set together, meeting promoters and bookers in the DC area, starting to do gigs, starting to just see more wild shit in club, you know what I mean? Just growing up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, those two. And then this one day, like my sophomore year, mind you, I'm majoring in English and minor in African American studies. I was just kind of trying to pick something that I was just pretty good at and understood. My dad teaches civil rights law. We've been talking about race and politics since I was a child. That's the lens through which we just kind of break things down and see things. Same with my wife. It's like that's the bar. So it's like that makes sense.
Your wife studied law, right?
My wife is actually a political scientist, but she's concentrates on the intersectionality of race and gender.
Awesome, cool.
So what I'm just saying, I've kind of very much grown up in a political, racially charged kind of household where I understand those kind of things. So when it came to what I'm going to study at Georgetown, I was like, oh yeah, this is already where I live. You know what I mean? This is kind of up my alley. This is something I can do while still juggling my music career.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't just like calculus or some other wild stuff, some shit I don't understand. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I and also knew it would bolster kind of the historical significance and the history of the music in addition to just playing it. I was like, oh, I'm gonna need to know this. I'm gonna need to know how to write about this. I'm gonna need to know how to discuss this and synthesize this information. So for me, it was like, all right, this is full circle. This makes sense.
I want to put a pin right there because I feel like if a lot of musicians now, especially younger musicians, try to separate music from culture and treat music like it's a thing on its own. But I think it's really important to point that out because this is something that's really important to me as well. As a musician, I think it's important to see those connections and as a matter of fact, to come at music understanding the cultural context first, because that's how the music is born. Because when I feel like when you separate it, it loses some of the value and the impact for the audience as well.
Exactly. That's how it sticks. It's like you have to really understand that. You have to really be intentional about trying to understand it and be amongst it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what hit me. I think after 2 years in DC, I was like, if I really want to do this, I need to be immersed in the culture, in the scene, and where it's happening. And right now, it's New York. So my friends called me sophomore year.
Yeah.
They were already at Juilliard. This is Joshua Crumbly, Samora Pendighi,
Yes.
hit me up on my birthday like, Brax, you should apply. Like just apply, see what happens. They were like, yo, the alto players, like Will Anderson just graduated. Eddie Barbesh, I think he just left. Like, you should just, I don't think there's any alto players right now, man. You should just see. I was like, all right, fine. I'll see. So I called some homies that we play together in DC, Elliot Seppa, some other cats and stuff. And we record in one of the dorm practice rooms at Georgetown. It's like it's in the dorm in the lobby, and then like there was like a little room with a piano. I was like, oh, let's just wheel in some drums and bring the bass and like we'll just record it here. I had a Zoom recorder. I did my whole audition tape, and I sent that in. I got a live audition. I nailed it. Not only did I get in, they were just like, you know what, we really want you to be here. What we're gonna do is we'll match your scholarship. We'll make this easy for you.
Amazing.
And that was just one of those beautiful moments where everything aligned, where I was just like, all right, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. God made it super easy for me. He did. He spelled it out. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna have to take out all these loans and do all this. It was like, if financial stresses was keeping you from following your dream, it was like, well, here you go.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
That's amazing, man. I know that a lot of people that have been following your career know you for playing with Christian,
Hmm.
Marquis, and of course your solo projects. So I'm not going to talk too much about your sideman work. What I want to focus on now is, you know, as you know, the title of the podcast is "Keep Taking Ground." But let's take a moment to define your ground. What have you been personally, creatively, artistically in pursuit of over the last, these last couple of years?
Sure. I've been one. I love the saxophone. Like first love is what it is. I still aspire to just get better on just at
Yeah.
that level. So on that stream, I'm just trying to practice, trying to hone my skills, trying to get better, trying to just articulate myself musically on the instrument
Yeah.
as cleanly and clearly as possible. I think something, I want to be able to play it.
Mm,
You know, I hear a tone, I want to be able to just emulate it.
yeah.
That's still a goal. Probably going to be a lifelong pursuit.
Right.
That's what that is.
Is there anything
Uh,
specifically about the saxophone
mhm.
that you value, or a particular approach or aesthetic that you value that kind of guides how you pursue it that daily?
Say that one more time. Is there an approach or an aesthetic that
Yes, an approach, an aesthetic, or something that you value that kind of guides how you pursue that goal, of getting better on the saxophone.
I think I lost your audio, right there. But I think that's what you were asking. Is there an approach or an aesthetic, that informs what I'm going for?
Yes, so I think we're back now. So I'll just repeat the question. So, is there a specific thing that you value or an aesthetic that kind of guides that goal of getting better on the saxophone?
Yeah, a few things.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I've always wanted a unique sound. And I know it sounds like something like you don't just specifically go for, but I guess what I mean is there there are things that sometimes you hear that are like maybe cliche or you just hear often,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's easier to be like that's what I don't want to do, so that you can kind of, it's a little bit easier to define how you want to sound sometimes when it's like you want to do something antithetical to this.
Yeah.
Um, and some of my like touring experiences have helped inform that as well. Like I've played in super loud bands where I've been like, all right, that's not the approach I want to take on the horn. I don't want to be, that feels unnatural to me. So sometimes I kind of just listen to what feels natural, what feels comfortable, and try and cut through in that way.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
musically, sometimes even personality wise, it's like oftentimes I listen to myself and I'm like, man, the choices I make musically, sometimes it's what I would say if we were having a conversation, because that's what a song or, that's what a lot of this music is like, what we're kind of trying to emulate. We're just like having a discussion about a particular topic, and everyone's different
Hmm.
voices kind of come out musically.
Yeah.
And yeah, I notice I'm like, sometimes my approach is like, how can I say the same thing with less words? How can I do this without having to yell it? How can I communicate this in a clear,
Mm,
confident, just transparent way? That isn't just too, you know what I mean? And that's maybe me just psychoanalyzing my sound, but I think there
yeah.
is a connection there sometimes between the choices. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna play this note super loud because I'm like, all right, I think I can get my point across like this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to your point, to your question, like, is there an aesthetic? I guess yeah. It kind of goes in line with who I am. There's just a quiet, cool
Hmm.
confidence to it that I
Yeah.
know what I'm doing, I know what I'm trying to say, but I don't need to beat you over the head about it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. When I had um, John Gordon on the podcast, season one, he talked about becoming a stylist and how very
Mm.
early in his development, um, he was turned on to the idea of kind of like honing your own sound and developing a personal sound. And I think when people hear the term stylist, a lot of times it could become a negative thing in terms of, because I think there's sort of like a binary approach to this. You either become a traditionalist, or a stylist, and sometimes people think that when you become a stylist, it boxes you in to one specific thing. But I think when he
Mm.
shared the concept, it was more of a general sort of the idea of connecting with who you are as a person honestly, and
Yeah.
developing something that's personal, that could be distinguishable from somebody else's sound, you know. So I
I
think,
would. I gotta check that out because I like that. I kind of agree with that. I think there's something to. Yeah, you don't have to necessarily have it. So it's not necessarily something that's contrived. Like this is what I'm gonna go for. It's more so like, yeah, get in touch with who you are.
right,
The sounds and moods and things that speak to you emotionally. That's what I do. That's how I write. That's how I compose most
yeah,
of the time.
yeah,
It's from a space or a statement or an idea,
mm-hmm,
a feeling. It could be a feeling of being lost in between some things. It could be a feeling of, um, you know, sometimes I've written songs from like an anxiety kind of
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
spiral kind of perspective that like
mm-hmm.
where the song kind of feels like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, yeah,
sometimes I write from the emotional space and
yeah.
then let ideas and musical things kind of grow from that.
And I think that's important, Braxton, and you know, that idea of starting with an emotion or an idea, a feeling, a
Sure,
texture,
sure.
um I think is really important for instrumentalists, because we don't have the words to rely on to communicate that with communicate the narrative through, you know, the spoken word.
Hmm.
um and I feel like if in a lot of music that's missing, because when the song is done, I
Yeah,
always ask myself this question: when the song is done,
yeah.
what did I just, what can I remember? How do I feel?
That's it. Like I get how we've gotten here.
Yes.
You go to music school for 4 years, then you do another two masters, and some
Yeah.
people do AD. And after a while, it's like your audience has become nothing but musicians for a 5, 6 year, 7 year period, and it's starts to shape and warp your intentions behind the ideas that you play and when you improvise, that you write when you make a tune. It's
Mm-hmm.
like who you trying to impress. And I've been fortunate, I think, while I was in school,
Yeah.
be on the road with other artists
Yes.
that gave me that perspective. It kept me
Mm-hmm.
grounded. You know what I mean? That was one of those grounding things, being on tour with Christian or with,
Yeah.
any other artist, where it was like, all right, I go to school. I know I spend hella hours here. I'm writing for my friends. You kind of want to impress your friends. Oh, here's this Brad Meldau thing I learned, and I'm going to play it on saxophone. Sure. But then you go on the road and you're like, no one gives a damn. You know what I mean? People want to just feel connected to something.
Yeah.
You know? Also, or like Brad's playing that because that's Brad. That's what Brad's feeling. You know what I mean? What are you trying to convey? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was fortunate to have those experiences in tandem where I
Yeah.
could push myself, artistically, creatively, and on the technique and all these different rules and composition or whatever, but then still know you have to connect with people on a personal and emotional kind of level.
Mm-hmm.
People need to walk away from a show knowing who you are, what you believe, and like, where
Mm.
you stand on things. And I think that's important. People I've worked with are like that. Christian is one of those guys, and I learned that early. I'm like, that's how I want to be. It will be different because I'm not that person. I'm not from New Orleans. I didn't grow up with that. No, it's like, no, I'm from Maryland. I did this. I grew up. I'm a middle child. All those different
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
shape
Yeah.
me. That's what I want to come across.
Yeah. I
You know
feel
what I'm
like if
saying?
there's a sense of like real honesty and deep rooted connection and soul in your music, can you talk about you know, how you value those concepts, and how do you channel that into your music?
Absolutely. With the honesty, I think there's a vulnerability that I've always been attracted to in certain artists and people.
Yeah.
Um, some of that could be just like my upbringing. I think I've always found it to be way more powerful when someone's willing to be vulnerable emotionally
Mm.
than constantly putting on this front of armor.
Mm.
It gets tired to me,
Yeah.
And I grew up with that. Like there's some of that's generational. My dad, I feel like I've never seen that man cry. You know what I mean? That there
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that. But this is a new generation. I think we're reframing what masculinity looks like, what
Mm.
being a person looks like,
Yeah.
how you know what I mean, with all of those things, just trying to be more honest, transparent, and vulnerable. And for me personally, I've always been a seen that in artists and been like, damn, man, like that's crazy. They put all that out there, you know. I've always been attracted to that kind of vulnerability, and I think when it came to me writing music, yeah, I wanted to convey the same, and I knew like, it's going to take some courage to write about my life as opposed to fabricating an artistic person. You know what I mean? A new name or something, and just creating a backstory for it, which is fine. But I was like, nah, I kind of want to write about myself. And to some degree, it takes a little bit of bravery to put you and your family and all these different narratives and things in there. Of course, it's going to be sensationalized a little bit, but like,
Of course. Yeah.
yeah, I've always thought that was powerful when other people did it. So I wanted to try and attempt to do the same thing. And I think in doing that, you end up connecting with people on a way bigger level by be willing to share that much. With regard to soul though, too, I mean, I grew up like listening to Motown. I grew up listening to soul music in the church. And I feel like so much of that just came from my upbringing. So I got to give props and give flowers to my family. That's what that is.
Yeah.
You know, my dad could sing a little, all my brothers could sing a little bit, you know what I mean? Like there's just a general musical talent and love for just good music and soul in my house for sure.
Yeah.
You know.
Talking about family, as you mentioned, you got married about a year ago, and you just recently had your first son. How have those experiences shaped your approach to music, your creative process, and also just your general output, you know, as a creative entrepreneur, really?
I'll tell you right now, it's kicking my ass. It's man, the time management is real. I think if anything, it's refining everything. I was just talking to my therapist about it yesterday. I'm like, man, trimming the fat out of my day.
Yeah.
You know, trying to multitask, figure out where I can get my practicing in and where I can, and just getting more efficient.
Yeah.
There were definitely times where I played for 4 hours and probably only needed to practice for 1 because I spent 3 hours just kind of improvising or jamming. And there's some times where I'm like, no, I need to learn this song, or like I need to, you know what I mean? It's helping me to manage my time a bit better already. I'm only 2 months in, but it's going to bring it out of you. So on that level, for sure. On the creative level,
yeah,
with like, you know, my inspiration and stuff, it's honestly just it's reprioritizing, kind of, it's making me reprioritize some things. It's making me just readjust and find another balance. You know, I think I spent years trying to find a balance between just being married or being in a relationship and music, and wanting to spend all my time, you know, trying to find out how to split my time. And now we've introduced another piece, you know, my son.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be right now, I think, an adjustment period with how to best do that and continue to move everything forward.
Yeah.
But I'll say, like, yeah, me and my wife, I think we're getting there. Like we're getting into stride.
That's good.
We've got like the support and help we need to be able to do so. But I'll also say that sometimes it takes months for things to come out of my music. So probably mid next year, there'll be a whole project that's like kind of inspired by this time.
Yeah, yeah.
But right now, I'm still very much experiencing it and downloading it, and I'm fortunate. Like it's all been beautiful. Everything's been pretty textbook. Yeah, so I imagine the next batch of music is going to be pretty like buoyant, full of life.
Yeah,
you know, joyous.
As you say that, quick segue, there's a first project that you put out called Sketch.
Oh yeah.
And I had downloaded it years ago, and then my laptop crashed, I lost it, and then when I went back to get it, it wasn't available anymore.
Oh no, is it gone?
I can't find it anywhere, really.
Dang, you know what? I uploaded it to CD Baby years ago. Maybe I just need to go back in there, see what's going on. That's wild.
Yeah, man. And I think Pariah was on there.
Yeah.
Is it
more on there?
Is it Lullaby? The other track?
Yeah, Brody's Lullaby.
Brody's Lullaby. Yeah, man. That was my jam, man. I used to play that like over and over. I think for me, it was not just your playing, but the sensibility of the aesthetic. I remember asking another very young, prominent saxophone player how important, you know, he felt being intentional about the aesthetic of your music as opposed to just like the improvisational virtuoso element of it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if a lot of players only focus on the virtuoso uh historic part of it and not the aesthetic, but I feel like if your music has a very tangible, palpable, consistent aesthetic, is that intentional? Are
Mm.
you making creative choices that lead towards that aesthetic, or is it sort of like just instinctual for you?
A little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
It's instinctual for sure.
Yeah.
I think not every saxophone is necessarily an artist. There's that too. That's fine. That's but
Yes. Yes.
no, I think I could pick up an instrument and still get a similar mood or feeling across because it's just in me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely something instinctual for sure at
Mm-hmm.
first, and then you know, I think all these different things I've like studying English, studying all these other different things, have all just helped me to be able to convey this in different ways so that I get the point across on cover art. Because like I'm an independent artist, so I'm involved in every
Yeah.
aspect of everything.
Yeah.
So when I want to get a photo shoot, the outfits and the stylists and the you know what I mean, the like how the layout, like how I want the cover art to look, all the flyers for show, all types of things, the mood, like can we do this filter to make it darker, whatever,
Yeah.
like every aspect I want to convey a certain thing, and
Yeah.
it's definitely intentional, and it's just how to best communicate that. I think musically, um, yeah, I mean, even to a producers, because it's like you can leave the studio and we still got a long way to go before the record is done.
Yeah.
So it's like it's constantly just like trying to explain and define the
Mm-hmm.
vibe and the feeling that you want to different partners along the way. It
Yeah.
could be on the visual space, it could still be on the auditory. Like the producer, like this plugin is going to get me this dreamy vibe, and that's what I want for this. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah. Absolutely.
got to be involved. I'm intentional about all that. I'm involved in all those pieces and constantly trying to learn it myself.
Yeah. I feel like if there's somebody listening right now that can get some value from this, I want to go a little bit deeper on that one before we move on.
Sure.
Um, I remember when during my very last year of my undergrad program, I had put off doing some electives, and I ended up spending the last semester doing like 3 or 4 philosophy courses, and that was like by far like my best semester of my undergrad. I wasn't doing actually any music courses because I had done all of those.
Got out
And
the way.
yeah, that process of learning about phenomenology and ethics and all of that helped shape how I see the world. And it also, the process of reading and reflecting on literature and writing and improving my ability to communicate those ideas inevitably filtered into my sensibility about how I communicate through music. And being an English major, Georgetown, sorry,
Town. I'm just
Georgetown.
loving how you're articulating this. This is exactly right. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I feel as though I think there are a lot of musicians, saxophonists included, particularly, that are doing a phenomenal job of digging into the tradition, understanding how to play their instrument. But I think there's also a wide cross section of players that haven't yet developed the ability to understand history, transcendent ideas, current ideas, and
Mm.
synthesize it in a way that they could communicate it through their music. Do you have any thoughts about that process and how you've done that? Because I feel like if you've been able, that's something that you develop and had probably become
I
part
can
of your
break that down.
DNA.
I can break that down like pretty practically. It's
Yes.
really like transcription is the process through which I like to learn things. I like,
Yeah.
taking an engine apart, breaking it down, putting
Yeah.
it back together. It's the same thing that I think we're doing with bird solos. It's like we have to do with pop songs if you even like it. Firstly, like that's why I'm like there's always this instinctual thing or thing that I'm like I genuinely do like some of this music of our day
Yeah.
and style of our time.
Yeah.
And like that's just real. No one's like it's not a contrived thing, so I do. But then it's like the step further of like breaking it down, studying it to some degree. What elements of it I do like, relearning, I don't know, a Roddy Ricch song on guitar and singing something, whatever. It's like there's got to be some genuine connection to what's happening
Yeah.
now. And if that's not part of you, then I don't know. But for me, it's like, yeah, I genuinely do like that stuff and old school music of the time, when my parents were young.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, jazz that, it had its heyday before they were even born. So it's like there's a genuine love for all of those different eras and styles,
Yes.
firstly.
Yes.
Then an intention about like, all right, breaking it down and learning those tunes. Like I listen to them again and I learn the tunes and I sing them and I like them. I'm like, where does this combine? Where can I blend these with, original material and what artists of today, again, back to the motion, what artists of today speak to that same thing that I hear when I hear Train, when I hear him play, cadenza on I Want to Talk About You, 63 Newport or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like wailing, but you just want to like cry, you're like, damn, what is that? Or I may get that feeling in a Esperanza tune or Emily King tune or something or Nick Hakim, who's got this like darkness to it. Yeah, I don't know. The emotion is like, it's timeless, and that's the thread.
Yeah.
That's the thread. And I'll just try and tap into that, man.
Yeah.
It ties it all together. But there's, like I said, a genuine love for all those eras. I've been to school with people that they're like, yeah, I don't listen to the radio. I don't know what any of this, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. It's like you can force it. You can force yourself to, if people do it, you can get a stylist and they'll just make you look like, someone of the day. Or if you genuinely like it, you'll just naturally incorporate certain things into your style.
Yeah, I'm just kind of getting a sense, that idea of honesty and a willingness to dig deep into the things that you really connect with and then communicate that through your music, Is there anything else that you would like to share that you feel has become part of your sort of like musical DNA? I know I'm putting you on the
Yeah,
spot
like
here a little
something
bit.
more on the vulnerable side, I would say like that's just real. It's like I feel like every cycle, every album cycle, there's just like this period of like of like growth, but it comes from just like a doubt
Mm.
to discovery to like belief again to like a new love of the expanded being that I'm in, or space that I'm in now. It's
Wow.
like that's every time. And it's like I expect it to get easier or to just not, or for that feeling to not come back, but it's like no. It's like part of the process.
That creative cycle.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
For sure. But yeah, just to push through.
Yeah.
To continue to create through it, and you always come out the other side. And it doesn't, I don't know, for me, I was like, it doesn't necessarily go away. It's always, I think that's the scary part of just like being that vulnerable and continuing to push yourself.
Yeah, amazing. Is there something specific on the saxophone or conceptually that you would like to share with me right now? That kind
Yeah.
of breaks down a concept or something on the saxophone.
Yeah, this is just something that my teacher Ron Blake used to just kind of instill in me,
Yeah.
and it's something I think will probably be helpful for most saxophonists because we tend to play a million notes.
Yeah.
But it's a couple things. It's one, it's the breath is like the most important thing.
Yeah.
Real breathing space. Because it's going to, if you're taking in a real breath, you gotta take the horn out your mouth for a sec, or and just breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And that breath is like, it's everything. It's your sound. It's who you are. It's like that's super important. So starting practice sessions with just like, again, long tones, but being intentional about filling yourself up as much as you can with your breath, using breath to like help space out your phrasing, and melody, and like really singing, playing, creating melodies on the horn, memorable, just nuggets of just or hooks. If this were a songwriting masterclass, just like every part of the song should be a hook, and like and if I'm improvising, it's like, yeah, like just think melodies, just think of memorable little melodies on each section. Motivic, it can be motifs, it can be ideas that come back. But we're creating a composition on the spot essentially. So it's like it's melodies and referencing them and building them and you know
Amazing.
that's yeah, that's what I love on the instrument for sure.
No, I use setup to demonstrate any of that on the horn.
Okay. Can I mean, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Were you thinking of anything in particular, or trying to go for anything particular when you were playing through the form? There, by the way, if you're listening, that was all the things you are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Just just visually, maybe I think I was just like thinking about this vista because I do have a very beautiful view right here. But no, musically, I'm thinking about, yeah, just space and melody, man, and rhyming as well, like rhyming, yeah. In different ways of doing that. I don't have to rhyme each line with the next one, but I can rhyme line A B. I can go A B, C A, and rhyme A with line. You know what I mean? I'm thinking, and particularly in that song, it's such the way it's structured.
Linear form.
It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
fun to play over. You can think of it in groups of two or four or eights
Hmm.
and larger sections. So yeah, stuff like that. Rhyme schemes. I think that's where I was kind of at.
Huh. Yeah, that's an interesting way to express that. I think um we usually express that as like motivic development.
Yeah.
um like again, there's a connection to your background with being an English major and
Mhm.
writing, and just kind of bringing that
Yeah.
concept um into music there. That's amazing, man. It's been a blast chatting with you about your journey. You've really been one of my favorite saxophonists over the past, I guess 8 years now, when I first came across your music.
I
Thank
appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man. And I think everyone listening is gonna have is gonna be able to take away something from this conversation. Um, Before we wrap up, I have one more quick question for you. Um, you know, what was being on the road like? I mean, you've been on huge stages, you've toured with your own project, with Christian and so on. I think that road, everybody has different experiences on the road. So what was that like for you?
Which one? Sorry, so just in general, just what being on the road,
Yeah, let's talk
because
in
they're so
general.
different. Like torn with Tom Mish and then torn with Christian, it's such a different. Um,
Let's talk about
I say
let's
like,
let's talk about Christian.
oh yeah, man, Christian is hilarious, bro. It's like, it's like little brother, big brother vibes. So there's that.
Yeah,
Um, but at the end of the day, it's like, man, I learned so much. Learned so much. To me, it was like that was like my master's, artist or AD program right there while I was in school. It was
yeah,
like I'm getting, from someone who's successfully doing this,
yeah, yeah.
so much game about the music business,
Mm-hmm.
so much about marketing, Because I mean, at the time he was with Concord, but when he made Stretch Music, he had left that deal and started independent. And
Right.
that's like you could see a real transition visually. He changed his name.
Yeah.
Like it's a huge transition in his career, and a lot of that was just Christian's brainchild, like just thinking of all of this stuff himself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then starting his own imprint label within Rope It Up. That's something I may want to do one day. When I find the right situation. But like, yeah, it's like so many different things that he was doing business wise that were really, really cool, super smart, and inspiring. So like, yeah, just picking his brain on all types of things. Him showing me spreadsheets on how he put a tour together. Like, dang, this is how much this cost, and like this how much. It's like that's good information that no one's really going to show you that.
Right.
So yeah.
Amazing, man. So we've reached that portion of the podcast where we're gonna play a rapid fire question game, and we're gonna put you on the spot a little bit, Braxton. So the first thing I wanted to do, well, the game is called 1, 2, 3. I wanted to share one piece of. Actually, let's start with 3. 3, 2, 1. So share 3 saxophonists that have been influential for you, 2 albums that have been influential, and then leave the audience with one piece of advice.
Okay. All right. 3 saxophonists.
Yes, 2 albums.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kenny Garrett
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Cannonball Adderley.
Yes.
Woo. I mean Coltrane. Easy
Amazing.
one. I could list so many more, but anyways.
Yeah.
All right, 2 albums.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cannonball live, quintet in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Then I gotta go. Favorite album. Oh, Bird with Strings.
Oh yeah, man.
Crazy. That was an early, yeah. Bird with Strings was nuts. All right,
Yeah.
one thing of advice.
Yeah.
Just keep growing and specifically keep like actively pursuing to get to know yourself and who you are, what you're about, what moves you emotionally, actively getting at the core of that, and then write and share from that space. And I think you'd be shocked with who you connect with, as opposed to writing from a more cerebral, right?
Yeah.
Right from there.
Amazing, man. Braxton, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thanks so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, your experiences. How can our viewers connect with you?
Oh man, social media. I mean, that's the way nowadays.
Yeah.
So just follow me on maybe Instagram. It's at Braxton_Cook.
Yeah.
I think Twitter is just at Braxton Cook, and then any social media platform you can write me. I mostly write back.
Yeah.
And then you go to braxtoncook.com to just see everything on there, tour dates, all types of stuff, whatever.
Amazing. I want to take a second to shout out one of my subscribers, Marwin Olive Rose. He left a comment recently on episode 1 of season 1. So shout out to Marwin.
Dang.
And if this conversation was that?
He's a day one.
Yeah, man. Definitely. If this conversation, you found value in it, please leave a comment below and let us know what stood out to you. And please hit up Braxton, check out all of his music. Braxton, what do you have coming up?
Oh man, I got a new project coming out at the top of next year, like
Amazing.
Q1. And new singles and videos are on the way. They're finna come out soon. So yeah.
Amazing. Look out for that, guys. Thanks so much for listening. And please like, subscribe, share this video with someone that you think is going to find some value. Thanks so much. Please stay tuned to more conversations. And I want you to keep taking ground in your musical, professional, and creative journeys. Braxton, one more time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man. All right, brother.
Peace.